This is the Filmcast review of Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. I'm going to read the plot summary of this movie from IMDb. Scott Lang and Hope Van Dyne, along with Hank Pym and Janet Van Dyne, explore the quantum realm where they interact with strange creatures and embark on an adventure that goes beyond the limits of what they thought was possible. End quote. Devindra Hardawar, the Ant-Man movies, in my opinion, have been generally quite enjoyable.
Perfectly
Like
fun.
Ant-Man 1, very fun.
I will
Ant-Man,
never forgive them for not being Edgar Wright's Ant-Man movies, but
no disagreement there. No disagreement
perfectly
there. But
fine.
it's been like a fun, enjoyable time. And one thing that was kind of cool about Ant-Man and the Wasp is the second film is that it was like very self-contained. Didn't feel like super massive stakes.
Had a
Just some
good villain. Had Lawrence Fishburne. Like I enjoyed it. Sure.
just some fun times. Like nothing. No beef with any of those movies. Like I agreed with you about the Edgar Wright. It would have been nice to see an Edgar Wright Ant-Man movie, but overall, really had a great time watching the first two Ant-Man movies. Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania does not continue the trend of being small scale. I mean, it's very small scale in terms of
It is very small scale. Come on.
in terms of its setting, but in terms of like its implications for the MCU, it definitely has bigger things in mind, I think, right? So the question for you, Devindra Hardawar, is did this expanded scale, this expanded scope of what it was trying to do work for you in this movie?
Not really. And it's a weird thing too, because I came out of this movie, I think in the process of watching, I was like, oh, this is fine. It's perfectly enjoyable. I am having a good time. I tweeted like, this is fine, but I think it's only really great when Jonathan Majors is on screen. And that is true. I think he is fantastic. He just is really bringing a lot to Kang. And he's an interesting actor to watch right now. But then I just started thinking about it. And the more I got away from this movie, it is like whatever interest, whatever enjoyment I had was left back in the quantum realm. Because coming out of it and thinking about this movie and being like, man, it is weird how they go to another universe, a subatomic universe, and nobody is like, wow, hey guys, look at these aliens. Why are there humans here? Nobody's impressed by anything really. Everyone is kind of bored, and they did a lot of talk about like how this movie is mostly filmed on the volume. I love the volume. I think the volume does a good job for The Mandalorian and a lot of the TV shows.
The Batman too. It looks amazing in the Batman. Matt Reeves, the Batman. Yeah.
Here, it felt like I was watching the Star Wars prequels, where nothing existed. Like the backgrounds were barely there. The objects people were interacting with. I don't know if like the things people were seeing around them, if the actors even knew what it was. Like maybe that's why they weren't registering like how weird and how incredible a lot of this is. And I feel like that is so weird because we just got out of Avatar 2, which is a completely made up alien planet. And I've never for once doubted the reality of the giant telepathic whales or anything in Pandora. Whereas here, people sitting down at a table, I don't buy it. I call bullshit, like Poker Face. Nothing felt tangible. Everybody seemed so bored. And for a movie, it basically ends up being an extended Rick and Morty episode because it's from a Rick and Morty writer. And so much of the new MCU stuff is from Rick and Morty people. So you kind of get that vibe. But yeah, imagine a Rick and Morty episode where, they go to a new universe. They meet all sorts of weird aliens. They have unique customs. Oh, there's like some sort of war going on. That's all Rick and Morty stuff. And I think it is amazing what that show used to be able to do within like a 30-minute episode. But now you stretch out that concept to like a movie, to characters we don't always care about. And to be honest, like characters I don't want to hear much more about too, like Evangeline Lilly. I don't want to see anything else with her anymore. Like just from her like weird anti-vax status and a lot of stuff, but also her character is really boring and she's really boring in this movie. I don't know what happened because it feels like people are describing this movie as fun. And I'm like, I guess it was fun as we were watching it, but man, I have nothing. This movie left nothing on me other than Jonathan Majors being an incredible talent that I cannot wait to see where he goes and where Kang goes. But this could have been like a Disney Plus special, especially with the stuff towards the end, and just connect tissues to another movie or something. This feels so like such a waste of time as a movie.
It's rare that Devindra Hardawar and I will agree like 95% on anything.
Bingo. Yeah.
But I agree with a lot of what he said here. And I think to put a point on some of the stuff about the volume is a tool. It's like CG, right? can be used well, it can be used poorly. Here, I think it was used poorly because I think that, to Devindra's point, at no point in the movie did I believe we're watching these characters in the quantum realm, like
Right.
actually in this actual place that they're supposed to be in.
Cinematography by Bill Pope, the Bill Pope.
Yeah,
And it looks like trash.
The guy who made The Matrix. So it is that is really unfortunate, and I think I was not a fan of overall how the film looked, which is sad because I know many visual effects artists worked really hard on this movie, but like at the end of the day, if you can't package it together in a way that looks and feels compelling, it doesn't really matter for the final output. Jeff Kanata, your thoughts on Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania?
Well, Dave, I guess you could say my thoughts on Ant-Man and the Wasp's Quantumania is best summed up in the form of a limerick. 23 movies made up the arc that began with just Tony Stark. Now this Ant-Man starts a new plan. But did the MCU just jump the shark?
Ooh.
It's not a good movie, guys. It's not a good movie.
Yeah, high fives all around. Yeah,
not a good movie.
Also, here's the only thing I have, good limerick, but I believe there have been 31 Marvel films.
But 23 made up the arc for the Infinity Saga.
I see. Yeah, you got you. Oh, okay. So how dare I even? I was like, "There's no way Jeff got that wrong."
Don't.
That's my fault. That's my fault, Jeff. I'm sorry about that.
I think the Infinity Saga for me is a grand achievement, nearly flawless. I mean, there are peaks and valleys, but
I agree. It's a monumental achievement in terms of movie making.
Something we've never seen before in pop culture.
Right.
Yeah.
And
Avengers
in the interim,
Endgame and Infinity. Go ahead.
And the phase 4 has been sort of this. It seems to me there's been fun and there's been peaks and valleys there as well. Lots of movies I enjoyed, Shang-Chi and
Spider-Man: No
Doctor
Way
Strange,
Spider-Man. Yeah, lots of great. Doctor Strange. A lot of movies I've enjoyed very much, but it felt like it's been kind of spinning its wheels a bit in not beginning the next grand arc, which was supposed to start with this movie, like that Phase 5, Kang. Yes, we saw a little Kang in the Loki's TV series, but this was going to be where it all began, the next big grand arc. At least that's my impression.
Yeah.
And I think this movie completely fumbles the ball there. And I don't disagree with anything you guys have said. The look and feel, it does feel like a Rick and Morty episode. I think that's a great pull, Devindra. It does feel like that. It's overstuffed in the way Rick and Morty often is, where it's just like chaos and all the dimensions are happening and it feels like an overstuffed movie. It puts in some characters from Marvel lore that one I want to talk about specifically in spoilers that should be really fun, and it is badly done, poorly executed. That's such a bummer to me. The Ant-Man.
Damn it! Now I'm remembering the opening phrase I had that I forgot, because that would be good. But okay.
Well, the Ant-Man movies have, I think, utilized the inherent charm of Paul Rudd and been these wonderful kind of fish out of water. This is the superhero that this is the kind of the greatest American hero version of the superhero. This is the guy it doesn't fit in the suit quite right and is just kind of figuring out as he goes. And it's comedic and fun and charming. And that has been so great. And it worked in the context of sort of being a street level hero who's figuring it all out as he goes. And this movie just throws all of that out. Paul Rudd is, I understand. You've got Michelle Pfeiffer. You want to use her, right? You got Michelle Pfeiffer. I am still in love with Michelle Pfeiffer.
Sure.
Yeah.
Right? You've got Michael Douglas. You want to use him. These are incredible cinematic legends that you've got in your superhero movie. You want to use them. But I don't care. Like the whole notion of the fact that, that Janet was lost for 30 years in the quantum realm is a cool hook. But the idea that this is just what she was in a Guardians of the Galaxy movie, I guess, is what the answer is.
Mm-hmm.
And she refuses to tell her family things that could be helpul, before the middle of the movie. Yeah.
She's very traumatized, Devindra. She's very traumatized.
Very
traumatized.
traumatized.
It's such a wasted opportunity on so many levels. It doesn't hold together. The movie's a total mess. And it really bummed me out watching it. I didn't have much fun with it. I just constantly it's such a disappointment. And the notion that in the quantum realm, there's a whole world, there's nothing special about it being the quantum realm. There's nothing special about that.
Yeah.
It
just
could be
another
outer space.
place.
Yeah.
It could be a Guardians of the Galaxy movie. It could be another dimension. It could be anything. It doesn't matter. It's just all nonsense. It's just all gobbledygook. And there's nothing special or defining or unique or interesting about it. And, and then Bill Murray shows up and it's like, okay, what movie are we even in right now? and it bothers me that, we're supposed to feel stakes in this universe, but none of it really matters. There's no understanding or definition of how the quantum realm even really works, and why is it that you can use a Pym particle and make Ant-Man large in context? Like, why is it relative to the quantum realm? Why is that? And even how they get to the quantum realm, they just like get sucked in. It's like there's not even anything interesting that starts this adventure.
There's a scene where he's like, they transform back down to size, and she's like, "Oh," his daughter's like, "Oh, I'm so hungry now. Does that happen when you get bigger?" And it's like, but when you're
not bigger.
You're
infinitesimally sized. It doesn't make any damn sense.
Also loses one of the fun things about these movies where Ant-Man in real things, like in a room, and everything is giant, or being giant on top of a city.
That's the joy. The fun is the shrinking and sizing of shrinking and growing of things we recognize, not nonsense in Guardians of the Galaxy craziness. Like, let the Guardians of the Galaxy movies do that. They do it really well. James Gunn is good at that. But like this movie, it is overstuffed and flailing. It is absolutely flailing. Now, having said that, I also agree with Devindra that Jonathan Majors is phenomenal. Every second he's on the screen, he's owning it. He is you're transfixed by his presence.
Even though we don't understand Kang, right? We really don't understand where he came from or what he can do other than Darth Vader.
That's what I was getting to. That's the problem here. Is that the movie does him no favors in a movie whose entire point is to set up this next grand villain in a way the Loki series didn't, right? Loki series is kind of putting the question mark. Who is Kang, right? This movie was, he's a threat, and here's why. But it doesn't do that. It does not create it. You're right, Devindra, in that he is not well defined. His power set is not well defined. What makes him scary and or a threat and or interesting is not well defined. He is awesome. Like, his presence is phenomenal. But he's not done any favors by this movie, and it really feels like they fumbled the ball on Kang as a grand, like, looming presence over the next however many movies. And that makes me angry because
maybe Kang shouldn't have been introduced in the family-friendly type of movies. I think because I think back to like the comic Invincible in the Amazon series Invincible, where we've talked about, where you see a whole civilization kind of get wiped out within like 10 or 15 seconds. You're like, oh, that's hardcore. And here they're like, oh yeah, Kang did that. Yeah. Kang did that a lot of times. Yeah.
Go ahead, Jeff. Why does it make you angry? I don't know if you should feel angry over the movie, but like, why? It upsets you that the depiction of Kang didn't live up to its full potential, right? Why is that the case?
Yeah. Well, I like the notion of Kang being if he is existing outside of time, the constraints of time, and can be many things to many people. I love how he was introduced in Loki and how he is this sort of silver-tongued, you don't know if you can trust him, but he sort of comes at you from a very sympathetic way. He's not the menace. He's not, but also there's this threat of something underneath that Jonathan Majors pulls off so well. And I was hoping that this movie we would see why the idea of a man who's outside of time is terrifying. Like what is it about that notion that is powerful and threatening and has to be stopped? And what does he want? None of that? Like it completely just sidesteps all of that note and just kind of gives you generalized. He has beams coming out of his hands and he has armies, I guess, for some reason,
of the most boring looking freaking villain soldiers ever.
It's such a fumble to me of giving. You give the ball to this incredible actor and he's going to be able to take it and run with it wherever you want him to go, and you don't give him a direction. There's no there. And I'm hoping that gets corrected in the next several films, because Kang is an awesome character. And honestly, the end credit scenes point to something so much more interesting than what this movie is doing with that character. But I think this movie fails on nearly every level. Like there's very little for me that I found enjoyable or useful as far as setting up the next phase. It's such a massive disappointment to me.
Wow, Jeff. I think this is the most negative I've ever heard you on a Marvel film.
Well, it's not as bad as Eternals.
I actually don't agree with that, but
I know you don't. You loved Eternals.
I didn't love Eternals. I thought it was a solid.
You loved that movie, Dave.
I did not love Eternals.
Oh, check the film. Where's the tape?
Yeah.
We got tape of you saying I thought it was one of the best movies of the year.
Okay,
I think you said stuff like that.
I thought it was. I was shocked that people were negative on Eternals, because that's like every other Marvel film, But yes, that's good context to have, because then you can dismiss my opinions appropriately. I'm not talking to you, Jeff. I'm talking to our audience. I mean, I have not liked any Marvel. I have not really enjoyed any Marvel film that's come out since No Way Home.
Really?
So
I forget your opinion on Doctor Strange, but
Doctor Strange, you guys like that movie a lot more than me. Sam Raimi. It's fun to see Sam Raimi doing stuff, but I didn't think that movie was very good. And in retrospect, I think Thor: Love and Thunder was just terrible. It looked awful, and
volume, baby.
I actually think it's worse than this film. I'm going to put that out there. I think a lot of people are bagging on Quantumania.
At least that movie tried to do something interesting, like the weird negative space and the black and white stuff.
Yeah.
It was doing something rather than, I don't know, CG guys, figure it out. I'm putting these people on stage. Alien world.
Yeah, perhaps. But in any case, you know what? It's probably unfair. I would say they're both equally bad in my book. But yeah,
sure.
Didn't like that. Wakanda Forever, obviously, we talked about on this podcast. I think it had a lot of problems with it as well. Just in terms of it feeling more like setting up for the next thing. I have a lot of sympathy for the creators, the filmmakers, the producers, because my understanding is this film was it was filmed in, I think, 2021. It was filming wrapped in 2021, and I think they had there's just a lot of balls to juggle, and where does it go? And I don't know that this movie was ever intended to start Phase 5 and be the big introduction for Kang. Who knows if it was or not? But whatever the original intention was, the final intention was, this is the first film in Phase 5. It introduces Kang to a major audience, millions of people that maybe didn't watch the end of Loki, and it did not succeed in introducing him in a compelling way. You compare this to Thanos' introduction in Avengers Infinity War, which even though he was part of a whole other movie, I thought hey, they gave this guy pretty easy to understand powers. He's big, he's strong, and he wants to kill half of the creatures in the world, in the universe.
He has emotional stakes.
That's his whole deal, And not every villain can have as simple of a story, but whatever they were trying to do with Kang, it ends up really muddled and not particularly effective. Honestly, everyone's talking about how good Jonathan Majors is in this movie. I think he's very good. It just feels like he's in a different movie. Everything else in this movie feels like everything that's not Jonathan Majors feels like kind of one of those fantasy adventures I would watch growing up, in the 80s or 90s, like Willow or something like that.
It's a kid's fantasy. Yeah.
It's hey, we're going to this world and we're going to lead this rebellion against the blah, blah, blah. And it's except it's like a very shittily done version of that. And also, like you talk about how this is a Rick and Morty episode. It's like there are concepts in Rick and Morty that were
Yes.
done way better
Yes.
in Rick and Morty. I'll talk about them in the spoilers, but so I know people worked really hard on this movie, but it just feels like it feels half-hearted because, Jeff, what you said, I agree completely. The plot feels like it's too overstuffed. Here are the things the movie's trying to do. It's trying to bring together this whole group of the Van Dynes, like give them each kind of an interesting story, right? And there's 5 of them. And it's like the movie barely has any time for like Hope, the Wasp. She's in the title, but she's like in like she gets like, I don't know, 10 lines of dialogue in this movie, so she's barely in the movie at all. You want like Scott Lang and his daughter to like have a good bonding relationship. By the way, curious what you guys thought about Catherine Newton as the new Cassie Lang. This is her first time in the role. She's replaced Emma Furman.
I like her. Yeah,
I like her
perfect.
too. And supposedly, I mean, clearly they're setting her up to be Stature, which is from the comics, that Cassie Lang's superhero name. That it would potentially be a young Avenger.
Yeah,
and clearly the movie is moving. All these movies are moving toward the young Avengers, which I think is cool. I think it's a cool goal.
Yeah,
I think she'd be great as.
I totally solid. But like that's another thing the movie's trying to do: introduce Kang, kick off this phase 5 with Kang, like that I assume will culminate or end up with Kang Dynasty in a few years. And then also this whole rebellion subplot. Like this whole idea of like, hey, we've been subjugated by Kang for so many years. And it's like, okay, like
Also Michelle Pfeiffer was a part of it.
Yeah, Michelle Pfeiffer and her whole back. So it's basically like there's just too much stuff. And the movie's only 2 hours long. Like it's not, if they had like 3 hours, maybe they could have achieved it. And then ultimately, as we've already discussed, like it doesn't look very good. And so it's just, you combine all these things together.
Yeah.
You have MODOK in there who's like, feels like, again, from a completely different movie.
We can wait for spoilers for more.
That's going to be a spoiler for that.
He is seen in the trailer, but
good God.
We can talk. Yeah, you're right.
My original opening for this episode was the giant head can't hurt me. It's not real. Because it's horrific.
I think. Nice. I mean, if we're going to talk about it,
it's revealed that MODOK is in the movie, but you don't know who he is. So like, we can talk about that.
I think the entire problem with this movie can be summed up with MODOK for me.
Okay,
and that it is just stuffed into this movie.
Yeah,
poorly executed. The look of MODOK does not work at all.
Horrific.
It should have been. I mean, there is a MODOK TV series with Patton Oswalt,
which is awesome,
voicing it.
Awesome
what?
Show.
Awesome. You said awful or awesome?
No, awesome. I like that show.
Awesome. Fantastic.
Yeah.
So fun, so funny, so smart. Nails the look. I mean, it's all stop motion, but this looks like the face in Tron from 1982. That stretched face of the actor from Tron. It's so poorly realized. The character is squandered and it's kind of just shoehorned into this movie for no reason at all.
Guys, how's our MODOK budget looking? Everything else has taken up all the budget.
I think I can use the warp tool in After Effects. Anyway, I would agree. And so you add all these things together and it's just like, it's not terrible. I would say it's not like, as you said, Devindra, you can watch this movie and it's like, this is an inoffensive
I've
time.
talked to a lot of people who enjoyed it, who had
missed
fun with
opportunity.
Exactly. You can watch it and be like, that was fine, but like, I think there's very few people who will be like, but it's not good. And that's a huge
we
bummer,
should demand better. That's what that's the thing I'm telling a lot of people. It's like,
and Devindra, you're so right in the comparison to Avatar: The Way of Water, which of course, was made over a much longer period of time with much more care and effort and money. I'm sure it cost a lot more to make that movie than to make this one. So, in some senses, the comparison is unfair, but you can see when a filmmaker cares about making the effect shots really work,
or has the time and resources to do so. Right?
Indeed.
But also thinks about the environment and like what these things are and how all these different things interact with each other and can describe that to the actors. I feel like a lot of that was missing here. One thing I will also point out, pre-spoilers, is that William Jackson Harper's in this movie. Absolutely wasted. And another reason to be disappointed is he is like among the top names to potentially be in Fantastic Four, to potentially be Richard Reed. Not going to happen now.
Reed
Because
Richards.
of this.
Yeah.
Because of this. Yeah.
Indeed.
Yeah.
All right, folks, let's talk about spoilers for Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania starting right now. I was making the point earlier that it feels like Jonathan Majors is in a different movie, right? Like, he's like, I'm going to kill your daughter in front of you and make you watch her die 1,000,000 times. And it's like, juxtaposed to this, like, hey, goofy, fun family adventure with MODOK in it. You know, it's like, it just feels like, yes, Jonathan Majors is great, but the tone, it feels like veeringly wildly out of control. Jeff Kanata, why do you think MODOK, who is the Corey Stoll character from the first film,
There's Yellow Jacket.
Doesn't work in this movie?
Yellow Jacket is MODOK in the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, where do I start? I mean, there's a moment where Scott Lang goes, "Oh, I get it. Murder." He does the acronym for MODOK, which I can't remember right a second. But he gets it like in a way that no human would get it. You know, like it's so forced and inorganic. Just how it looks in the movie, like the look is representative of how it actually is presented in the movie too. Inorganic, false, goofy, dumb. Like he's there as a punchline for some reason. He goes, "Oh, Kang made me. Why would Kang do? Why does he make your head giant in there? It just makes no fucking sense, man. It's like the whole thing is just arbitrary, just like every other moment in the movie. There's a guy who has holes. The holes character, which doesn't exist in the comics so far as I know.
No, he doesn't have holes.
Oh yeah, he gets holes.
He gets holes.
That is the most Rick and Morty thing in this entire freaking movie. That is so Rick and Morty.
How many holes do you have is a great line. I will give you that.
That's good. That was good.
Yeah.
Jeff. You have to admit.
I mean, yes. Yes. I mean, the movie has some moments.
Let me push back because you guys are making me defend movies as usual that I don't like.
You were choosing to do this.
Is there any way to make MODOK like the idea behind MODOK is that it's a guy's giant head, right? Like, is there any way to make a head look that large without it looking silly, like it does in the movie? You know?
I think you do it in a very grotesque physical way.
Yeah.
Like it's like you literally took a guy's skull and like stretched it.
It has to look grotesque and visceral. It's not just like you stretched out a face across a visor. You know what I mean? It's literally like it has to look organic. It has to look like a physical transformation. And I think that would. This is the wrong movie for MODOK to be in. Like,
he needs to be in a James Gunn movie because MODOK as a character also reminds me of like when James Gunn did like practical effects and things like Slither and the weird creatures in that movie. Yeah. So
it's the whole notion that in the quantum realm is just a bunch of people doing people stuff.
Why are they people?
Why? What? Give me something about the quantum realm that is interesting. It's small down here, okay? Like when we first get there and you see like almost amoeba looking stuff, I was like, okay, cool. This is cool, you know. But it's as soon as like war factions show up and like space aliens with technology, like okay, so in the quantum realm, there's stuff made of smaller stuff. So the gun that the guy has that shoots like a gun is made of what is the things that the gun is made out of? Is this the molecules in the gun?
Yeah, like is Bill Murray a human? How did humans get there at all? Like what?
He said he has it where it counts. You know, like he's human where it counts. Which okay, that's a weird joke for you to make. How do you know our sense of humor? Okay,
the whole thing. It's just like, oh, so you know. The last movie, we think, oh my God, she survived for 30 years on the subatomic level. What an amazing thing. Oh no, she was going to bars and stooping Bill Murray. Like,
sounds like a good life, actually.
That's what she was doing.
Yeah. And helping Kang like basically repower himself. Like good job. Good job.
The big solution at the end is Michael Douglas comes with an army of ants. In the quantum realm.
Yeah. Guys, did you remember? This is an Ant-Man movie. Here are some ants.
They're big in relation they're infinitesimally
they also
small.
got shrunk down. They also got shrunk.
They got shrunk down.
I know.
Yeah.
I know.
So
what does anything matter? One thing
but
we haven't talked about.
They didn't get shrunk down like
as
all
much,
the way.
right?
But they have their own technology.
Oh,
There's
hey,
just
Jeff,
society.
that's where the quantum realm came into play, right? Because remember the ants, they like evolved over the course of centuries to be more, smart and everything, and that's why. And that's why they came into
that totally makes sense. We didn't talk about the action in this. Whatever action is in this movie, completely incomprehensible. Like I cannot see anything. Somebody hits somebody and the camera pans and whips, and I don't know who got hit. I don't know who got punched. I don't know anything. And then what is Scott's thing at the end when he's facing Kang?
It's inherently uninteresting action because you have these faceless dudes.
Yeah.
Which is like, I think, I don't remember if we discussed this as a rule, but anytime you're introducing an army of faceless, nameless zombie creatures to be your villains, you've lost, basically, like, in terms of...
I mean, stormtroopers beg to differ, but okay.
Yeah.
Those would not be good enough in, like, a B-grade, shooter, in a video game.
They're from Haze, the video game Haze.
The video game.
But the whole notion is, like, Kang shouldn't need an army of robotic automatons. Like it's like that's not how you make him introduce a cool villain. Is he got shrunk down to isolate him from the notion of Kang that this movie tells us is there is this one version of Kang that was so terrifying that somebody shrunk him down into the quantum mode, banished him into this place so that he couldn't escape. And what he does is he gets an army somehow there because of
his unique powers. He
gets an army of things and starts taking over this area. His motivations don't make any sense. None of it's defined.
Here's another beef I have with the movie is at the end with when Scott encounters all of his other selves. Right. And it's like, oh, those aren't you. Those are just other probabilities of you. It is the laziest implementation of that idea I've seen. There's actually another episode of Rick and Morty.
Yep.
That's really
Rick and Morty has ruined us
really well. We're basically like, I don't remember how they described it, but basically like every time there's a different version of actions, the screen splits into different versions of the scene. And so you see, like, by the end, it's like there's like 16 or 64 versions of this because like every single one has a different story playing out. And it's like, oh, like I can, not only is that a cool idea as a driving plot for that episode, but it actually like opens up my mind where I'm like, oh, like this is such a cool idea of like there's different versions of how it could play out. Like, I'm like, I am thinking about the world differently now because I watched that episode. Right here, you watch it. It's like it's a fun way to get a bunch of Scots in there, including like a Baskin Robbins one for some reason.
Well, there's
like,
only one Baskin Robbins one in the infinite probabilities.
It's just like whatever. Okay, but I think guys, we're ignoring the biggest problem in this film, which is its unabashed endorsement of hustle culture. Scott Lang has saved the planet. He's written a book. And his daughter's like, well, what have you done for me lately? At the beginning. And it's like, really? How about raise your ass? How about I don't need to do it? How about I save the planet? I don't need to do anything else for you anymore. I mean, I'm sure you guys are parents. At the end of the day, you're like, I've already done enough for my children. End of story today. This guy saved the planet. And his daughter's like, well, what have you done for me lately?
It's weird how they could not stick that emotional landing where, Thor: Love and Thunder, whatever you think about that movie, I think that opening with Christian Bale is
awesome.
Strong.
Awesome stuff. Great stuff.
Strong stuff. And that gets you on his side pretty much like, these guys suck. Kill them all. Sure, go ahead.
Yeah.
But there was a stake there. Whereas in this movie, it's like, okay, Scott Lang has been away for 5 years, right? His daughter has grown up without him, and this is supposed to be the reckoning of that. And this movie just like completely kind of ignores a lot of that stuff and brings it back up at the end. That's really it.
Yeah, I mean, I actually called Jeff Kanata after we'd both seen the movie because I was in a state of discombobulation because the trailer for the movie sets up a plot where Scott has lost time with his daughter, like 5 years because of the blip.
Yep.
And he wants it back. And Kang's like, I can give you that time back, a conflict that is nowhere in the film at all. And it's like, that trailer came out a month ago. This is one like 2 years ago, where they're like, oh, we changed where the focus is. Like, I think they were clearly making this movie up until the last minute, and it shows. And that's a bummer, you know? So, any other thoughts?
Such a bummer.
Let's talk about the post-credit sequences. I actually thought they weren't. I've seen some people be like, these post-credit scenes are terrible. I actually thought they weren't that bad.
They're interesting, more interesting than anything that came before them. So yes,
yeah,
interesting.
So in the first post-credit sequences, my understanding is that this Kang that we saw is dead, right? Like, this version of Kang is dead.
Well, but maybe not.
Maybe, but I mean, we see basically the is it the Council of Kangs? What is it called?
Yeah, Council of Kangs.
Council of Kangs. And you see like different versions of Kang, like Immortus and other versions of Kang, like talk about what's happened in the quantum realm, and then we see, hey, there's a shit ton of Kangs, all ready to unleash hell, basically. So, you know, if any of them are even moderately effective, it might be bad for the planet. And then that's one post credits, and then the second post credit sequence, I believe, is just a scene from Loki season 2.
Well, I think it's showing Victor Timely, which is a version of Kang that may actually be this one in Quantumania that is hiding back in time as Victor Timely. Because in the comics, the Victor Timely persona of Kang the Conqueror is something he did to hide after the Avengers beat him. So that may be what we are supposed to think, is that he is hiding and working and biding his time to take revenge on Earth.
And it's kind of cool to see Tom Hiddleston and Owen Wilson on the big screen. That was a little bit of
that scene was more interesting than I think anything in the movie. Yeah. That scene,
my audience actually woke up. I heard people waking up.
Yeah, people were like, "Whoa, that was cool!" You know, like
it's an awesome idea. This notion of a time traveling bad guy who can be all these different versions of himself, like, that is cool. That is cool. This doesn't exist in this movie, but it's cool.
Also curious how Owen Wilson. So spoilers for season 1 of Loki, but also curious how like Owen Wilson and Loki are going to buddy up again, because at the end of that show, I believe Owen Wilson has no memory of Loki anymore, if I recall correctly. Yeah. So it's like something will clearly need to happen for them to be friends again. So we'll look forward to that in Loki season 2. But
I want to throw a quick shout out to the MODOK death scene, because I think that was actually a little fun and maybe had some of the energy that I wish this movie did have, where MODOK does his heroic things like, I'm going to die a hero. And everyone's like, sure, buddy. Yeah. That was actually good.
Don't be a dick. That was the ultimate MODOK,
So I guess Wesley Crusher is what's his name?
Will Wheaton.
Will Wheaton. That's Will Wheaton's catchphrase, right? I guess I wonder if they gave him a check.
Well, Jeff, I feel like this one's broken you, man. This one's really broken.
I feel like that. Bummer. It is a massive bummer.
I'm gonna go ahead, Jeff. Go ahead.
As much as I really didn't like Eternals, that felt like a movie that could sort of exist out here in the ether and not be central to what's going on. And this one felt like, all right, here we go. Let's buckle up for the next crap. And that's what
here's another thing that no one talks about, Jeff, is somewhere in the MCU version of Planet Earth, there's a freaking gigantic hand reaching out of the ocean.
That is referenced vaguely, but it is referenced.
Yeah. And apparently planets are just incubators for Celestials. And people are just cool with that knowledge now.
We have seen the grandest scope of the universe. We've seen the tiniest portion of the universe. We've seen the nature of how time and timelines work, and none of it is actually connected to anything. So
we're now experiencing this thing in the cinematic universe that comic book lovers have seen happen time and time again in comics, and that is stories being crushed by the weight of their own continuity. If that exists and also that exists, then how do we square that circle?
I'm just gonna say I'm actually encouraged by the fact that Jeff doesn't like this movie, because it means that there is a limit to Jeff's Marvel loyalty. And I actually quite appreciate it. It's like the line must be drawn here, to quote Captain Picard. And
that's what I said in my limerick. It feels like this is the moment it jumped the shark to me.
it does feel to me like the storytelling is a little bit off the rails at this point. And so the question for me is like, is it going to continue to go off the rails,
Yeah.
or are they going to course correct in time for Kang Dynasty, right? Which is theoretically
Sure
going to
hope
be
so.
like this next set of
Mhm.
phases, like Infinity War or something like that, right? Like so.
What's
I
the
mean,
next
I-
Marvel movie?
What's the next one? Marvels was delayed.
Isn't the Marvels in coming out in November? I think.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but
it
if
was
there's
supposed
one
to be
before
soon.
that, there's going to be a summer one.
Guardians
least-
of the Galaxy 3.
Oh yeah, there's that. Is there one more before that? Before Marvels? 'Cause Marvels could be bad. Marvels could be bad.
Why do you think that's true?
It's another sort of esoteric, weird concept that
Mhm.
might not go down
I
well.
So
don't
the next
think-
Marvel films are Guardians of the Galaxy in May, Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse in June.
Yeah,
if
that'll be
you
good.
consider the Marvel. And then Marvel's in November. And then there's theoretically going to be Kraven the Hunter, but I don't think that's going to happen.
That's not a
anymore.
Marvel movie though, isn't it?
Oh,
Sony.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Sony.
Yeah.
It's a weird
So there you
Sony
go. There you go. Those are the Marvel films this year.
I was not joking, guys. I do think some executives like saw this movie, was like, "Oh crap, have we? Where are we here? What's going on?"
I don't know if it quite
yeah.
happened like that, but I do think it's possible that. I mean, here's another thing I need to point out, and I'm sorry I didn't say this
Mhm.
earlier. Is
Mhm.
all the Marvel films are still like massively financially successful. Like, despite the lower cinema scores, like every single one has been a huge hit. But I do think people can see Rotten Tomatoes cinema score, audience scores. Like people can see that it's like declining. My guess though, Devindra, is it's more a function of cost than it is of like
I'm
these
sure.
stories being bad. I
I'm
don't think
sure.
I don't think Bob Iger is like, oh, the Lion King remake must be the top artistic quality before it makes $1 billion. Like I don't think that's his calculus.
I don't think so, but I think at a certain level, if you start ignoring like that, if you start ignoring like the actual storylines, the actual quality, like this all falls apart.
I
This
agree.
whole
I agree.
thing.
Like, I think that like I honestly think that the Star Wars franchise is still recovering from Rise of
Yeah.
Skywalker. Personally, you know,
Yeah.
but like you make a bad movie, like a movie that's so bad that it's like
Yeah.
it takes a lot of work to like put the pieces back together, you know,
you
and
lose
so
audience, you lose trust. You lose trust from the people who care about the stuff the most. So
Yeah.
I think that's important. I want to shout people out to Bilga Abiri's review at Vulture. This is a cry for help.
yes,
That's the title of this
title of
review.
his Ant-Man review. But yeah, but
It
at
is
the end
worth
of the
reading.
day, despite literally everything that we have just said, it's still pretty impressive that Peyton Reed made a movie.
You know, maybe at sometimes we have to take that back.
I don't agree.
Sometimes.
Nope,
Wow.
I will
no,
not.
we'll
I
never
will
take
not.
that back.
I will
It
never
is
take that back.
impressive.
It's impressive to make a movie.
It's impressive. This
It's
movie came
impressive
out.
to make a movie.
Yeah. Thank you so much for watching this video of the Filmcast. Check out these other videos that we have available, and be sure to hit like, subscribe, and hit that bell icon to get other videos from us in the future.
You can also go to thefilmcast.com to catch all of our audio podcast versions of all of our episodes.
And support this podcast at patreon.com/filmpodcast, where you can sign up for ad-free episodes and exclusive After Darks.
Thanks so much to everyone who makes the Filmcast possible.